Welcome to the Ride With Us podcast, a podcast dedicated to Prescott Rodeo Grounds and the world's oldest rodeo. It's history, traditions, some storytelling, and all the events happening at the rodeo grounds. I'm your host, Greg Mengarelli, and today it's a real privilege to be with someone who's been in and around the rodeo for 50 years, helping support the rodeo, and most importantly, making sure that we take excellent care of our animal athletes. Today we have Dr. Steve Dow. Steve, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
Yeah, well, look, we have a lot of great topics here on the podcast, but I think something we overlook sometimes is our animal athletes. They are extremely important to our sport, and that's also indicative of how we care for those animals. I know that, to get a good score, pretty much in any event other than barrel racing. With barrel racing, you got an animal athlete as well. So every event, you have to have a good animal underneath you or out in front of you to perform well. And I just want to first say thank you for your decades of service to the world's oldest rodeo, ensuring that we have excellent care for our animal athletes.
Oh, it's been my pleasure and pleasure of Prescott Animal Hospital and all the doctors that have provided that. It's a fun time.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, look, let's get to know you a little here, Steve, before we get into the rodeo and how we care for animals. How did you get to Prescott and Prescott Animal Clinic?
Well, it started, I met Dr. Jim Savoini. It's kind of a Italian story. I worked with his cousin in Phoenix. They had the first large animal hospital in Arizona across from Turf Paradise, and I worked for them for a year before I got out of veterinary school. And then about the time I was ready to graduate, Jim called me and wanted me to come, and he was having a bad back, so we came up here. And long story short, I was already working for a dairy up in Washington, but a year after that, I came down to Prescott, and my wife loved Prescott and met Jim Savoini and Charlie Doctor and obviously their wives. And it was a great run ever since. And unfortunately, Dr. Jim Savoini just died about a week ago.
Right.
At 93, right. And he provided a lot of stability for all of the rodeos and participated in those. And in fact, when he hired me, he said, I got to tell you, son, he said, you can't do three things. He said, well, what's that, Jim? He said, one, you can't rope because I rope. And number two, you can't hunt because I hunt. And we can't be gone at the same time. And number three, you can't play cards because I play a lot of cards. It worked out. It worked out for ever since, how long has it been? It was over 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, fun times.
Well, that's a big name for Prescott, for the rodeo, to lose Jim Savoini's tough pill to swallow. He had huge contributions, as you know, to the Prescott community and ranching community and the rodeo. So the Savoini name is very important to our rodeo. And what a great memory you have of meeting him early on and getting hired on there with Jim. I got to ask you, where did you go to school, vet school?
Well, that was a little bit of a different route too. I graduated from the University of Arizona and went in the Army. Okay. And I thought I was going to save the world when I went in the Army. I went to Airborne and Ranger School and went to Vietnam and decided that wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. And my grandpa had raised horses, and I'd been around his place up until college, I guess. And then after that, I had two choices of pursuing animal degrees or going in the Army. And so I initially chose the Army, came back, got my veterinary. After I got out of the Army, went back to the U of A, got my veterinary prerequisites and a master's in animal physiology.
Yeah.
went to vet school in Colorado State.
Okay.
That was really the only. There were three schools you could go to in the West here. It was either Davis, or Washington, or CSU.
Okay.
Now there's a number. I think there were only 18 schools then.
Okay.
But now there's a lot of them that have started up because of the need for veterinarians.
Right.
The problem is for large animal veterinarians, they they don't make the money that the small animal veterinarians get, and it's a tough life. I mean, you get called in the middle of the night, and
right
now for small animals they have emergency clinics. But it's not even a job. It was never a job for me. It was just an adventure and a way of life.
Yeah. Colorado State. Well, that's good. I went to Kansas State University, and now why I'm asking the question, because they have a good vet school there.
Yes, they do.
Kansas State. I worked on a farm there, one of the K-State research farms, and it was right next door to the vet school. So, that's another popular vet school.
You bet. It's one. They've done a lot of. They've got a lot of federal money invested in K-State now. Mm-hmm. Dr. Nolte went to K-State. He's a veterinarian that I had hired. And so the rivalry between vet schools, in fact, one odd story, for the March Madness, I chose all the schools that were in it that were vet schools. And, the roll of the dice there, and they all lost in the first round.
That'll teach you. Yeah. Well, good. Let me kind of take us back to when you first got involved with the rodeo. Can you give us some history there about how, you got started, or when you got started helping at the world's oldest rodeo?
Well, Prescott Animal Hospital had always supplied veterinarians because you have to have a veterinarian at every performance of the pro rodeos.
Yeah.
And so we provided veterinarians for the slack or for each performance.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of, like I said, it's a way of life. And we always look forward to the rodeo coming in. It was different stock contractors, different clowns that come in, and all the rodeo participants, a lot of them locally too,
right.
The Stewarts and Savoinis,
Right.
So they when they come into town, they're in a hurry because
yes, they are.
They're getting ready for the next rodeo, and so you end up treating more of the participants' animals than you ever do the rodeo stock.
Sure. Yeah. So you got started in the rodeo in the 80s, early 80s?
Yes.
Yeah. And Dr. Savoini had already been a part of the rodeo, so it was natural because you're a part of that clinic to be there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So I think there's a lot of misconceptions about animal welfare, and we're going to get into that. But before we do, give us an overview, if you would, of kind of what is your role? What are you there to do? You mentioned PRCA requires that a vet be there for every performance and slack. I mean, anytime there's any activity in the arena, you're there. Give our listeners an idea of your role and kind of, what you see your purpose being there.
Well, our purpose is animal welfare in general, whether it's participants, horses, or if it's a cow or a calf. It's kind of interesting. I got called one time to look at one of the bulls. Well, those bulls don't like being looked at too much, and I had an incident occur at one of the ranches that I was working at, and they said, "Doc, that bull's been sitting out there in the middle of the corral for all morning." And I said, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "We don't know." I said, "Can you look?" I'm looking around. Well, yeah, I guess.
Is this a trick? Yeah.
And so I walk out there, and he stood up, and he looked good to me, and I got out of there. And he started coming after me. So no, it was a quick exit. And in the rodeo stock, I mean, these guys, they're professional athletes. I mean, the bulls, the horses, the cows, calves, the whole works there. And so they're well cared for. And I think that was the only time we ever had a call to look at one of the bulls. And, you know, he looked good, couldn't even get a temperature taken, but he'd been eating and walked good, no lameness. Those are things that when we walk through, one of the jobs of the veterinarian when you first come to the performance, and there's usually at least 3 or 4 of us that are providing the services. When you first show up, you check in with the staff, let them know what you're going to do. And then you do a walk around, and you walk around to the pens. You look at the stock that is being provided, and Harry Vold had done it forever. And so usually visit with the stock provider. And if you have any questions or anything at all, then, and there's great volunteers too. I know Mike Doyle had done it for years, and they always give you a call before the performance to make sure you're coming, and we'll be there. And after you check in with these individuals, you do the walk around, and you look at all the different pens, you look at the different livestock that stock provider has provided, and the calves, they're going to be there, and the bulls, like I said, you don't get much of a look at those guys, but they come out of the chute. That's about the best look you're going to get, I think. And so basically, it's the whole picture of animal welfare. You're going around the grounds, you're looking at all the stock that is going to be in the rodeo. But in addition to that, you're providing service for the participants, because they're the ones that are going on to other rodeos, or, you know, they need the assistance, and they've got definitely deep feelings about their stock too.
Absolutely.
So everybody's involved with this, and everybody wants to take care of their animals. And I know there's been different controversy about it, but I can tell you there's not a better group of individuals for animal caregiving and animal welfare than the rodeo.
Sure. Well, and it only makes sense, Steve, if you think about a stock contractor. You know, their whole livelihood depends on that animal being healthy and doing well in the arena, right? If that horse isn't at top condition, or bull, whatever, and bucking as hard as it can, and it's got to be healthy, and if that doesn't happen, then that threatens their whole existence and livelihood. So it's of their utmost interest to make sure those animals are cared for well.
Oh, they raise them, you know, and they raise, like even the bucking horses, they're raised to buck, and they want to take care of them, and they tried to get the best bucking horses. I mean, and that's a whole trait in itself for horses. You know, some people think maybe they just bring in a bucking horse. Well, they're raised to buck, and they're incredible athletes to be able to buck the way they do.
Yeah, you're just kind of an extra set of eyes, if you will, during the rodeo to ensure the safety and health of the animals, because we all know the stock providers, Harry Vold and now Kirsten Vold, they're keeping an eye on their own animals, of course, but you guys are kind of a partnership to ensure that we have everything needed to ensure the safety and health of those animals while they're here in Prescott. You talk about cowboys and cowgirls traveling all over the country, and particularly for our rodeo, they're on the road a lot in June and July. They don't have access to their typical vet that they might have back home because they're on the road all the time. You'd mentioned to me here before we got on the air that a lot of your doctoring was for these folks who are traveling. You said they're in a hurry because they got to get to the next rodeo, but they still need that kind of help, typically while they're at the rodeo. And I guess, you've seen that.
Oh, definitely. In fact, some of these, some of the ropers, especially, I think, are in tune with their horses. And I know at one particular time, one of I can't, the name for is gone for a while, but he left the horse with me because pulse rate was elevated, the horse wasn't right, and he said, "Hey Doc, can you keep him?" Yeah, well, keep him till he gets right. And then he had a stable in Phoenix, and so after I think a week, we treated the horse, and he sent somebody up, got the horse, and took it home.
Yeah.
He
didn't want to have him on the road. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, he knew that this wasn't going to be good for him or the horse. So, yeah, they know what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. And they usually have more than one horse, right? So in these kind of cases, they can rest one that's not feeling so well and use the other horse in that case. So there's at times a misconception I see about, animals being abused in rodeo. And you and I both know that's not true. One of the things that I was talking to Jim Dewey Brown about, our general manager, earlier today was just some stats around this, because look, data doesn't lie, right? And I think in a typical year, Steve, there'll be about 400,000 animals in the arena for rodeos in the course of a year in our PRCA rodeos. What do you see, or what do you know in regard to data about any kind of injuries? Statistically, what percentage of those animals in the course of a year do we typically see get some kind of injury?
Out of all of those numbers that you mentioned, the 400,000, it's such a small percentage that it's like 0.0023, something like that. Yeah. So the numbers and these statistics are kept on every rodeo. Yeah. I mean, you have to, for a PRC rodeo, you have to have data that they supply. And for each performance, if we have one animal, and again, these are the stock during the rodeo, it's not the participants' stock.
Yes.
So with that number is reported, and that is part of the 0.1%.
Yeah. So if you had an injury at our rodeo, you'd be the one reporting that back to the PRCA, and that's how they get that data.
Exactly. Yeah. Each performance, there's a separate statistic for each performance, and then they combine the performances.
Yeah, I think it's really good for our listeners to hear that. Of course, we don't want any animals to be injured, but it's such a small percentage of the overall. I was talking to a friend over lunch today, and he says, "Greg, my cattle that I have in Montana are more susceptible to injury or death than the ones in the arena because of grizzly bears, mountain lions,
sure,
cold weather, you name it."
Yeah.
So the animals in the arena are probably better off than even the ones out on the ranch in some cases, based on predators and weather and whatnot. So,
without a doubt. I mean, people don't really realize that how well these animals are raised and cared for and treated. And if there is an injury, they have an ambulance that will assist in getting the animal off if it can't get off on its own power.
Yep.
And then we have facilities to treat that animal.
Yes.
And again, it's very rarely do we ever even see an injury here during the rodeo.
Yeah. Yeah. You're more just preventive and making sure that everybody's healthy and safe. And then a lot of it sounds like the competitors, the contestants' animals, that they're looking for some help while they're on the road.
And while they're currently here in Prescott, and are they going to move on, and can they take that horse, or, what to do with that particular animal? The the ambulance that they have, very rarely do we use it.
Right.
But it's a good thing to have. Again, it's preventative, and this would be a reaction to an injury, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So you've been around our rodeo for decades. Surely you have, we like storytelling on this. Most of it usually being true, but we don't verify it. But surely you have a story for us with your time around the rodeo.
Well, I think the bulls are always a good story because you can't do too much to them, but they can sure do a lot to you. So try to take care of yourself and not get in harm's way. I guess the story that I probably liked the best was one of the contestants brought a horse up to me, and it wasn't in the rodeo, but they had just purchased it and had a draining tract coming out of the back leg.
Okay.
Semi-membranosus muscle, which is the back part of it. And they said they were going to buy this horse. What do you think? And they said, well, you got a draining tract there. There's something in there. And we pulled sticks and all kinds of things out
like
of horses.
An abscess.
Yeah. Only this was draining. It was draining pus.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, with that one, we took it over to the hospital, laid the horse down, and I started trying to find where the track went. And I ended up going probably up to my elbow and felt a piece of metal.
Wow.
I thought, what was that? And I'm still working on it. And I end up pulling out a sprinkler head.
Wow.
And so what we traced back was he bought this horse off a ranch. And as a baby or a yearling, the horse must have set back on the sprinkler, broke it off, and then it went inside there and healed up. The horse wasn't lame.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting thing to find. In fact, I still have that sprinkler.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of a trophy.
That's crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's probably the craziest story. But
horses get into all kinds of stuff, don't they?
They definitely do. I've had several, and they seems like some of them just try to hurt themselves.
Yeah, I know horse folks, are always trying to be really careful about what's in the pen or the pasture, and to make sure that they don't, get injured somehow like that. So,
yeah. And then there's other horses that are in among farm equipment and harrows and everything, and they never get hurt. They walk in between them. So
those are the ones that aren't as expensive. The expensive ones always get hurt.
Exactly.
Talking about that a little bit, Steve, makes me think about our general manager and his meticulous care of the arena. Some places might have an arena, not ours, but some places might have a demolition derby or a auto race or different things in the arena. That's something Jim is very adamant about, is making sure that our arena is protected, preserved for only equine rodeo events, because we don't want that kind of debris in our arena for that reason. Yeah.
Well, the footing is incredibly important, and the material that's in that arena is very important.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't realize that this used to be a racetrack.
Right.
When that's where I started here, was the racetrack at Prescott Downs.
Mm-hmm.
And that track was really hard to take care of because of the monsoon season.
Right.
And the rain just definitely affects, the arena, and when it was a racetrack too.
Yep.
We had a fair number of injuries when it was muddy.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately here, Jim has taken good enough care that the footing is deep enough that even when it's raining, it's still safe.
Yep. Yeah, it's got to be, there's got to be a firm base down there, but there's got to be some cushion, if you will, for any of the animals to ensure their safety. I've had Mike Alderete on the show. He takes care of our arena. He's our tractor man, and he does such a good job. Even with monsoon, he's devised a way to seal off the arena with a roller so that the water runs off, and then he can, till it back up for the actual performance. He does a great job, and I think we've emphasized that on this show, but just the importance of the footing and the care of that arena to make sure there's no foreign materials in there to hurt the animals.
I know the footing has become a major issue in racetrack too, and they had all the injuries there in California, and basically it came down to the surface on the racetrack as much as anything, and so it is so important.
Yeah. Well, you have full access to the rodeo grounds, of course, the pens, as you'd already talked about, inspecting animals. We've talked a little bit before on here, but I want to mention again, just in terms of the bucking, how we get a horse to buck. There's a lot of misconceptions, or at least I should say some misconceptions out there about how you get a horse to buck, that there's this big shock, or there's some abrasive material used on a flank strap. Talk to us a little bit about what you've seen in terms of handling animals behind the scenes, moving them from pen to pen in the alleyways, and then also to get a horse or bull to buck.
Well, they're raised that way. I mean, that's how the stock contractors make their living, is that they get the good animals that can buck to start with, whether it's a horse or a bull.
That's a natural instinct, isn't it?
And they breed it.
Yeah.
They keep breeding those horses to do that. And the bulls are the same way. So the flank strap is in addition to their natural ability to buck.
It's like a trigger, right?
Yeah, it's an irritant.
Yep.
It's in a bad place, and so what am I going to do to get rid of it? I'm going to buck.
Yeah, but it's got sheepskin.
Oh yeah,
on it.
There's no irritants, no spikes, not anything. It's just there, and it's in a location that they don't like.
Yeah,
and so they're gonna buck more than they're even able to physically. Yep. Or not physically, but they will add that irritation to their buck.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I've seen even with a horse that's broke and is a great horse, but you do a pickup race or something and you throw somebody behind the saddle and they get their feet back there in the flank, then that horse, to your point, doesn't want anything back there, right? And they're going to crow hop a little bit because they don't like having that person's foot back in there. In terms of moving livestock, though, these animals do this all the time. You haven't seen anything with electric shock where you're really having to work these animals over to move them around. They kind of know where they're going already in the alleyways and the pens. And
no, I've never even seen a hot shot around using these horses. Do know where to go. Yeah. They've done this a lot. It's kind of a routine for them. They don't get very excited about it and just keep moving is what way it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, there's no abuse happening, if you will, behind the scenes, trying to get them to go where we need to get them to go. Is there anything else, Steve, that I've failed to bring up here or that you'd like to mention on the show in terms of animal welfare or your decades-long experience at the rodeo?
Well, I think animal welfare has come a long way. I think that before it was just kind of taken for granted. And people just thought that's a rodeo horse. But it has become so much more professional now, both from the animal care standpoint and raising these animals. They've just done a tremendous job. Yeah. And so our job as a veterinarian, particularly at the rodeo, is really just to react if there's a problem in the arena or in the back. And we've certainly had instances over the years that we had one horse that was neurologic and we kept it on fluids. And it was back in the day when the horse paddocks for the racetrack were still there. Right. And we treated that horse for 3 days with intravenous fluids. We couldn't get it up, couldn't do anything, but finally, on the 5th day, I remember he got up and it was still pretty wobbly, but they were able to take it home.
Yeah. Yeah. Like anything, we see advancement with technology and improvements and we learn more, and that's true probably in this sport of rodeo and vet medicine. Do you think there's also an element, horse values have changed a little over the years, right? I mean, a good horse might cost $5,000 40, 50 years ago. And now that same horse is bringing 80, 90, 100, maybe more, 100,000,
Probably more. Yeah.
So there's a big investment in those animals. And therefore the care reflects the value of that animal, right?
Oh, definitely. And you can only do so much sometimes, and sometimes it just takes a time out.
Right.
And fortunately, as you mentioned, they usually have a backup horse, or I've seen them trade back and forth. A rodeo, a roper didn't get drawn for this particular round. He gives his horse to another friend, and he ropes with that horse. So, yeah, it's a community.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what we all like about it, right? You mentioned a couple different times to me that you always loved when the rodeo was in town. It's kind of people don't totally understand this, but we try to help them understand. There's a kind of a fraternity back there. Every year you see a lot of the same people. You see Harry Vold every year, Kirsten Vold, the stock contractors. You see the announcers. You kind of have this fraternity of people that's a strong knit community looking out for each other, looking out for the animals. And it really makes it meaningful.
Well, these volunteers for the Frontier Days are incredible.
Yes.
I mean, they're giving it their all. The time that they spend just volunteering, and their care during the rodeo is incredible. They're so involved with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it comes from the heart. They're not getting paid.
Right.
They just like doing it, and they like the participation.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Steve, because almost every podcast, I try to make sure we mention the fact that we couldn't have a rodeo if it wasn't for the hundreds of volunteers we have every year that give of their time. They take their vacation time and they show up and work hard, sometimes never even really seeing a performance, depending on where they're working, right? And we owe it to them to put on a heck of a good rodeo because of their efforts. So,
well, I know, I guess I know Rex Henshaw personally. Mm-hmm. His dad was a state veterinarian for livestock, and his uncle was a state veterinarian for racing.
Okay.
And so Rex comes from pretty good stock.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you knew about his dad and uncle, but they were twins.
Okay.
And they looked exactly alike.
Oh, wow.
And the first time I came over here, actually to the rodeo, I was talking to Rex Henshaw, and I went back to our animal hospital, which is just across the street on Iron Springs. And there he was again. And I said, wait a minute. And I asked Salvini, I said, what's the deal? He goes, oh, they're twins. And they were twins.
Couldn't tell them apart, huh?
Oh, not at all. They were great guys, great veterinarians, and made it fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the Henshaws have always been very helpful. And Rex now, as you know, is on our Prescott Frontier Days board and does a great job. And he probably has something to do with roping you into being here today. So.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Like that gate there at the corner of the, what is it, Fair Street that he donated.
Yeah. If people have what Steve's talking about, we've had it out on the corner there, Gail Gardner and Fair Street. I think it's a part of one of the original gates for Prescott Downs.
For Prescott, yes, it was.
Yeah. We had a little banner on it there, and Rex wanted to make sure that we had it prominently displayed so a lot of people don't remember or weren't around for Prescott Downs.
When I mention Prescott Downs or the racetrack here, all they know is the rodeo. Right. I said, where did they run the horses? It was a small track.
Yeah, it was kind of a small track. Yeah, we miss having Prescott Downs here, but we're fortunate to have the rodeo, and we're going to have it for the 138th year this year, and proud to say that we're selling tickets like crazy. We sold out some of our best seats in a matter of days or weeks. And if people are still looking for tickets, make sure you go to just worldsoldestrodeo.com. If you go anywhere else, you're probably going to get scammed. You will be scammed. So make sure you either call directly the rodeo office or come into the rodeo office off Rodeo Drive, or go to worldsoldestrodeo.com only. We don't want people getting scammed on those tickets. Well, Steve, sure appreciate visiting with you. It's been a lot of fun. We learned a lot. Hopefully the listeners learned a lot. I just want to say on behalf of Jim Dewey Brown and Prescott Frontier Days, thank you for all you've done for our rodeo. You've been a contributor for sure, and we're grateful for your expertise, grateful that you take care of our animals so well, and it's a very important part of our rodeo.
Well, I appreciate that. I certainly haven't done it alone. It's the volunteers here in at Prescott Animal Hospital, veterinarians we share that with. So it's been my privilege.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you at the rodeo.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Well, thanks for listening to the Ride With Us podcast. That's all we have for today. We'll see you next time.